Welcome along to Man in the Mirror. It's Hayden here. And as I mentioned in the introduction, my guest today is Thomas Dunckley, who is online as Making Sense Makes Sense, which if you see that written down, it kind of makes more sense, I suppose. But there's lots of sense, and Thomas makes lots of sense. He's a fragrance expert, a writer, a speaker, a blogger, and a podcaster. He had a podcast previously called Fume Chats, wasn't it?
That's correct, yes.
A few years ago, and has a new one coming up, which we'll talk about. Thomas, how are you? Thank you so much for making time to do this morning.
No, thank you for having me. I'm really, really well. And I'm glad you got your way through Making Sense Makes Sense.
Making sense. Do you find that a mouthful when you're saying it on your thing?
Yes, because I originally was going to do it as Making Sense of Sense, and the amount of times I have told people it's Making Sense of Sense when it's Making Sense makes it sounds great on paper and it works and it says what it does, but it is so confusing and I get it wrong so many times, so don't worry.
Yeah, and is it like scent or sense, or which is one of those words anyway? Thank you so much for doing this. And also in the introduction, I mentioned the fact that I think you were one of the first people that I sort of interacted with. It was in the dark days of lockdown, actually, when I got involved and started writing a little bit, but certainly consuming more fragrance content. And the Candy Perfume Boy was absolutely one of the things that I loved your content on Instagram, and that you used to do these sniff-alongs with Essential, which were amazing. And am I right in thinking that was in lockdown? Were they lockdown things, the sniff-alongs? I mean, I know they extended beyond that, but
yeah. Yeah, it started out as a lockdown thing. So we were sending out blind boxes, so samples, I think, labeled A to H on a particular theme, and then I would do live reveals. And we built a really lovely community of fragrance lovers. And what I really loved about that project is that we got to expose people to fragrances and fragrance brands that would not be so easy for them to come across in the wild. You know, there wouldn't be things that you'd find in your local department store, and people really sort of saved up to find the ones that they loved. It was a really fun project.
It was a really great concept. And for me, in my sort of early days of exploring different houses and different fragrance families, it was invaluable. And as you say, such a lovely community. And I think it was probably the first time I chatted to Susie Nightingale as well, who was often sort of turned up on some of those sessions. And during them, you could, you know, like a lot of these video things, you can have a sort of group chat thing, couldn't you? So people could comment and say what they thought of the various fragrances. And yeah, and that idea of Thomas revealing what the actual fragrances were only on the live was genius, because, you know, you could come up with your own theories or just, you know, think about the various notes beforehand, but without all those usual cues that you would have around, well, obviously the name, but the bottle, and, you know, nothing was gendered. So it created this really, well, it was a lovely hour, a really interesting conversation. And as you say, a really lovely community of people. And actually, I imagine for Essential, it was quite a good thing, because people could get quite passionate about a certain fragrance, and then, you know, obviously Essential could sell the whole thing. But almost it feels like I don't know, it almost seems like talking about rationing or the Home Guard or something. You know, that period of time, it's like such a weird period of time, obviously everything to do with lockdown. But I remember, and I know for lots of people, those sniff-along sessions were a real tonic, something that people really look forward to, and me included. They were great. I really loved them. So yeah, that's where I first encountered Thomas live doing that. And I don't think there's many people better at explaining fragrance in a really approachable way. He's got this brilliant ability to talk about it in relatable terms, in terms of textures and films and music and all these things that I can really connect with. And I think that it's a real skill, that, Thomas. And I know now you've come back, that's absolutely part of what you do now. And I think it's important, isn't it, to sort of democratize fragrance and to kind of strip away some of the language that makes it difficult.
Massively so. And I think that's where I started from in terms of writing. I remember when I got into fragrance, I was reading a lot of stuff online, and I just felt like, well, you know, it feels like I need to have, you know, 2 years of knowledge before I can even approach any of this.
I can read anything.
Yeah. And also I think a lot of the focus has always been on materials, and you can get really geeky about materials and they're fascinating and interesting, but they're really inaccessible, because, you know, you'd have to be purchasing them from, you know, certain places to get them. And I think for me, I've always wanted my writing to be, okay, a geeky, nerdy fragrance person can enjoy this, but someone who's just Googled a review of a fragrance that they want to buy or love and has never read any other fragrance content can also enjoy it. And I think that's by making it relatable. So rather than talking about vetiver, which to lots of people is an abstract concept, they don't encounter it in the wild. Yeah, what is it? What does it smell like? You know, breaking that down into talking about it being salty and rooty and earthy and having facets of grapefruit and things like that. That's things people can understand. Or just saying, you know, connecting it to emotion or a place. People go, oh, that in my head makes sense.
And I think, you know, you have a real skill with that, and it sometimes feels to me something that's lacking often in the retail space, you know, in sometimes in the sales associates, where it's quite easy to sort of trot out some of those key notes, and of course you can understand that's the shorthand, but it does feel, certainly for me, it's such an easier way to connect when you are talking about the different senses or textures or things like that. It just feels like a way to kind of latch on to fragrance a bit more.
Yeah, and I think materials can also be a barrier, because if you say to someone this has patchouli in it, well, someone doesn't like patchouli, they don't want to smell it before they've even had an opportunity to. But actually, it's more about the impression of the fragrance, and that's why the blind sniffing worked so well when we did that with Essential, because I suppose the first question people would be asking themselves when smelling that is, do I like it? There's no barrier to understand it. You know, there's no barrier of the brand, the bottle, or whatever. People are just like, oh, do I like the smell?
Yeah, which, as you say, you could boil it. You know, we all love discussing and all the discourse around fragrance, but almost that's the essential question, isn't it? Do you like it? What do you think? Does it connect with you, and does it do something to you?
Exactly.
Tell me about. I know this Candy Perfume Boy is no longer, and that was your sort of previous incarnation. When did you start writing and blogging? What caused you to do that? How did that come about originally?
Yes, may he rest in peace, the Candy Perfume Boy. He has passed.
Yes.
He has passed on. So I'm trying to think back when I started. So I started that blog in about 2011, and there was a lot of sort of preamble before that. I had been, you know, I fell in love with fragrance, I think about 2004, 2005. I was really into fashion as a teenager, and as sort of a sixth form age, I remember going into Debenhams, and they had Alexander McQueen's first fragrance, Kingdom, which I've actually got here, the bottle. Got two. I remember smelling it because I was obsessed with Alexander McQueen, and I was just appalled at how disgusting it smelled, because it was really sweaty, lots of cumin, but has this like beautiful rose sandalwood thing, which obviously I got to and started to enjoy with time. But my brain was kind of mine was kind of blown, because I was like, but fragrance is meant to make you smell nice. You know, my experience with fragrance was it was what my mum wore, and I always thought she was very glamorous. It was what my dad wore when he was going out. It's, you know, what I got for Christmas, and I'd put on and feel really, you know, masculine in my Paul Smith man that I'd get for Christmas. But so I was kind of, it didn't quite connect with me. I was like, I don't understand, why would you make something that was disgusting? So I started to read about it online, and then I found base notes, and I sort of just realized that there was this community of people who saw fragrance as a thing. It was more than just what you got for Christmas. It was an art form.
Yeah.
And through that, I met some wonderful people. One of them was Nick Gilbert, who I know you've had on the podcast in the past.
Nick.
Yeah, Nick, the one, the only. And we were friends for a long time, and then decided that what we were going to do was use Twitter as a medium for fragrance reviews. So we created this account called Fragrant Reviews, and we would do fragrance reviews in 140 characters or less.
Right.
At the time when,
isn't it? Just
it was, it was, and it was hard. It was so tough, and that helped, I think, hone some of my writing skills. And kind of inspired me. I was like, I like this, I enjoy it, but I want to do it more long form. And then I created the blog in about 2011, and it just sort of exploded from there. I never really expected it to go anywhere, but it did.
Yeah, and there was, well, the Candy Perfume Boy just definitely felt like it was really special content, and you know, everyone was aware of your work, and it obviously went on to win Jasmine Awards and do Fume Chat and lots of things. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I wonder, rewinding even further back, you know, you mentioned your parents already. What was your sort of gateway into fragrance? Was it these Christmas gifts, or was it a friend, or what sparked your interest in the first place?
I think it was always, this is such a cliched story. Young gay man watching his mother get ready to go out and being like, "Oh my god, I sound like Roger Dove," but it's true. It was, I think, I was amazed at my mum's glamour when I was younger, and she always used to wear. I remember it really specifically. It
Was
was
she very
Ralph.
glamorous?
Well, she was and she wasn't. I think my mum was kind of she was a contrast of many things, but
Mm.
she would be very not glamorous, but then she became so glamorous. And I remember she would always have this Ralph Lauren safari, which is what she would wear, and it was in this sort of very sort of antique glass bottle that's very like cut crystal, looks like a
Mm.
some sort of like whiskey decanter or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
inspired by that. It's very 90s and it was very aldehydic, very floral, just big. And I just remember that and thinking, wow, I'd watch her get ready. And she's super glamorous. Like I have this
Mm.
really specific memory of her. She would wear designer clothing. So she had this like beautiful Christian Lacroix dress.
Wow.
That I don't think my parents could afford to buy, but they did anyway. All this like Butler and Wilson costume jewelry, so like this gorgeous
Yeah,
like big
yeah.
spider on her shoulder and lizards and things, and their big hair and the perfume, and that was kind of why I was like, wow. And in my head, I think maybe I didn't consciously know at the time, but for me, that perfume was as much a part of that outfit and aesthetic um, as the clothing itself. It just
Yeah.
seemed to be a big part of it. So I've always really attracted to that, but it took me a while, I think, to find that for myself.
Yeah. And I think there's something, I mean, I'm slightly older than you, but that image of your parents getting ready in, I don't know, but maybe it felt like we don't have so much of it now, but, getting ready to go to a sort of posh work, there was more of that sort of work social culture, wasn't there, of like balls and dinners and
Yeah,
things like that,
yeah.
where you had to go and have dinner with somebody else from the company, all these things that sound absolutely horrendous nowadays. But yeah, that sort of proper dressing up. And
Mm.
I remember my mum in ball dresses and things, which obviously people still do that kind of stuff now, but not as much. It was a much more glamorous time, wasn't it, the 80s?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and then you got more into, what were the first fragrances that you connected with for yourself?
So I always, as I said, got Paul Smith Man for
Yeah.
Christmas, which I'm still glad they do. It's the green. It comes in a green bottle, and it's a
Harder to
lovely.
find, aren't they, now? They're sort of
They
phasing all
are.
those original ones out.
I know it's a shame, but it's very. I think if you find it's very cheap. It's just a
Mm,
nice, fresh green sort of violet leaf type thing. Very diluted type Dior Fahrenheit, I think.
mm.
But it's really fresh, and I used to wear that a lot. But the first one I think I bought for myself was Jean Paul Gaultier Le Mal, and that was because I, was becoming a gay teenager, and that's what you wore when you're a gay teenager. The straight boys at school wore Issey Miyake, Lady Issey. So that means every boy I had a crush on smelled like Lady Issey. And
Yeah.
then the gay boys, we wore Le Mal. And I still wear Le Mal today. I think it's a
I
genius
know
piece of
you're a
work.
big Jean Paul Gaultier fan, aren't you, to this day?
Yeah, I am. But that was probably the first one that I bought for myself. And then that's when I started getting into Kingdom and then really exploring feminine fragrances. Before that, I would never have dared. But yeah.
Now, you also, I mean, you have a full-time career that goes alongside all your fragrance work. How do you find navigating the two things and making time? I know you took a bit of time out of doing fragrance content, but now you're back again. Is it difficult to navigate the two things and make time for this work?
Yeah, it's really difficult because I have quite a I think I have quite a big job. That's not to sort of show off, but yes, I'm head of HR at an NHS hospital, and I have a
And you look
team of
after
about.
lots of people, don't you?
I do, yeah. I mean, we have about 4,500 staff overall,
God.
and I have a team of about 15. I really enjoy it. I think it's so different from what I do that the fragrance side has never felt like work, even though it has been work. I do a lot of
Mm,
freelance stuff.
yeah.
So it's never really felt like work because it's such a passion. But I don't know how I manage it. I think it's interesting. I was diagnosed with ADHD about 3 or 4 years ago. And for me, I think having multiple things is both a blessing and a curse. It's a very an ADHD thing. You're looking for stimulation with lots of different areas and it
Yeah.
keeps my brain active. The problem is that you get to burn out quite quickly in one or the other. And I find that it's very, very often that they're not in equilibrium. One is always
Mm.
more so than the other.
How are
But I
you with sort of having lots of tasks at various stages of completion, whether it's your NHS work or this work? Is that okay, or do you sort of stress and got to get it all done?
Yeah, so I would say I'm not a completer finisher. I'm great at starting things. I'm
Mm.
great with ideas. I'm really good when I've got a good team of people with me to sort of take forward those ideas. So it works really well in my sort of HR professional career because I've got a team of fantastic people who can take things forward with me. When I'm doing it on my own, I can be quite slow and quite overwhelmed by it for in the fragrance side. So that's why I
Mm.
have periodically taken breaks. But what I have found interestingly is I think HR has made me a better writer,
Do you
which
think
yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a real big misunderstanding about what HR is. And I won't bore your listeners to death by going into HR in too much detail because that's not what we're
Thomas has
here
got a
for.
PowerPoint for us now?
I have. I've got a PowerPoint and a 25-page policy to go through. But HR is huge, and
Yeah.
my area of HR is employee relations, which is all the kind of interesting stuff, the disciplinary,
Yeah.
the grievance, the flexible working, all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. And you write so much as an HR professional. You're writing policy, but you're also writing to people. You'll attend a really complex hearing where you may have a difficult outcome, and you will have to somehow write to them to include all of the legal bits that you have to include,
Mm.
and all of the key messages, but also doing it in a compassionate way, in a legally risk-free way. So I feel that's helped me really hone my skills as a writer to be more direct
Mm.
and to think about accessibility. Because where I work in NHS, I could be writing to someone who is working as a domestic assistant, but I could also be writing to a surgeon. So you've got a real kind of breadth of audience. And I feel that that's really helped me become a better writer.
And you say that to be concise as well and just sort of get to the point, and that directness must be very helpful. We'll talk a bit more about what you're doing now with making sense makes sense. But as always on the podcast, I like to find out about the guest's bathroom cabinet and some of the products you might use in your morning and evening routine. And I'm sure, Thomas, lots of things get sent to you, and I wonder if you have a sort of set regime and routine of things that you like to use, or does it sort of vary quite a lot?
It doesn't actually vary. I found like with my skincare routine, I've stuck to a very
Have
specific
you?
routine. Yeah. And I'm a bit like that normally in terms of habit. I like to get to a routine if I find that it works. I
Mm.
don't like to find it overwhelming to kind of think of new things.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are some products in there that I always use. So I'm a big fan. It's kind of a real mixture. I like Glossier products, I like Pixie products, and I like a bit of Chanel thrown in there. So
Why not?
why not?
High end,
Exactly.
low end.
Exactly. Throw a bit of Chanel in. That's always a good idea. So I love the Pixie Glow Tonic. I use that all the time. That's like an everyday thing for me.
Right.
And their Rose Ceramide cream as a moisturizer because it's a really thick, heavy moisturizer.
Do you put that on at night?
Yeah. So I do morning and night for both of
Mm.
those. And then what else do I use? I really like the Chanel Hydra Beauty Micro Serum is the most amazing thing. I don't always have it because it's really expensive, and I seem to power through it whenever I do get it. So that's like a treat thing for me, but I really like that. But then I'm really sensorial with all sorts of products. I like a nice fragrant product. I don't like using skincare products without fragrance, and sometimes I will probably select one based on how it smells, which is probably not the best way to do it.
No,
And
but it stands to reason. I think if we get into nice fragrance everywhere else, you want it in your skincare and bath products and all those things.
yeah, absolutely. Even with shampoo, I mean, if I have a shampoo that doesn't smell nice, I'm like, ooh, it works, but I don't want to use it. So yeah, for skincare, it's pretty straightforward. I've got probably sort of 10 or so things that I use
Yeah.
every day.
And then what about grooming and shaving? How do you approach that? Do you kind of keep, obviously got your moustache, do you keep the rest of it quite tight, and how often do you shave the other bits?
Yeah, so I probably do every other day for shaving, I think, because I have kind of the stubble around, and that I think gets after sort of 2 days gets too dark, so I like to keep it light. So, but that's really easy. I just electric shave for those for that. So I feel like my shaving routine is just super straightforward and easy.
Yeah.
Um,
And you mentioned shampoo. Do you put certain things other than shampoo? Do you have any product in your hair?
So I've no product in my hair. I just shampoo and conditioner. I've used the same shampoo and conditioner for probably about 10 years, which is the Bedhead for Men that they do. It's like a very minty shampoo and conditioner. That's always worked. Everything else I try and use will give me a dry scalp. So that's just like set in routine. But I have my hair is sort of a bit annoying really because I have lots of hair, but you can't see it because keep it quite shaved. So I have sort of a buzz cut style, which I've had for about 5 or so years now, and I don't think I'll deviate because I just don't. I tried to grow my hair earlier, this year just to see if I could do it, because part of me, my biggest fear is losing my hair. And I think my biggest achievement is getting to 37 and having a full head of hair. But
you've done very well.
I have. I feel like I have. So I grew it over Christmas and it got really long, and I just hated having to style it because it's so thick.
What's the style? Does it go sort of out or down?
Yeah, it's just
thick,
it's straight, thick. No, just thick and dead straight. It's really tough hair, and it just goes out. So I'm religious about my haircuts. I get my haircut every 2 weeks on the dot because I just start to look like a microphone. It just all goes out in sort of one sort of spherical thing. So I like to keep that nice and trim. But yeah, I just get out of the shower and I dry my hair with a towel, and that's it.
And we talked about fragrant products. Are you loyal to a certain shower gel or bath things? Obviously, they could be lovely fragrance things, or do you just play around with those?
Yeah, I'm completely disloyal and utter floozy when it comes to shower gels. I just love exploring different ones. So I've got a Roger and Gallet one at the moment, which is their Fleur de Figuier, which is so jammy and fruity.
All that Roger and Gallet range is
fabulous, I think. So good and so cheap. I think the shower gel is about £6 and it's brilliant. But I do every now and then like to have kind of a fancy shower gel. So I really like the Lamal shower gel. I buy that kind of periodically. I used to love Guerlain used to do one for Vetiver, which was the most amazing shower gel, but I don't think they do it anymore. And I've had Chanel Cocoa shower gel, anything. I will have anything in my shower because I just think that's such a lovely experience just to put on a really nice shower gel, and it performs very differently in the shower. With the steam, you get sort of a really different impression of scent, and I really enjoy that. So.
It seems I might be completely wrong on this. It did feel like there was a time where the sort of Christmas gift sets or the various gift sets with fragrance felt like the shower gels or the sort of bath gels would come more regularly with those. Am I right in thinking that not quite so much now? It doesn't seem to be the thing that comes with it, or is there just as much of it that comes as those sort of gift with purchase type stuff?
No, I think you're right. I think a lot of the gift sets you see now tend to have more of like a rollerball or a travel size in there.
Size, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or a body lotion. Yes. Less so than the shower gels. I wonder whether it's just that if you're making an expensive fragrance product and then putting that in a shower gel, maybe people don't buy them as much because obviously they're just usually smaller sizes of a bigger product, aren't they? So yeah, I don't know. I don't really think see that as much as we used to.
Always used to be a thing, didn't it? Christmas, you get the little.
But I think that the brands are making so many more fragrances now. This is the thing, thinking about their SKUs that they have, you can, if you look at a brand like Guerlain, how many fragrances do they actually have? Do they have room for every single one to have a shower gel and, an aftershave lotion or whatever? I suppose it's difficult.
Yeah. And you talking about fragrance, we could do a whole other podcast about all, the fragrances you love, but I'm interested in how you approach it each day. So if you're working from home or even going into the office, what's your thought process in terms of how you choose your fragrance?
Yeah, it really varies. So I try to wardrobe my fragrances as much as possible. I've got a small sort of marble dish in my bedroom, and I will have kind of like a seasonal wardrobe on there, but I don't always stick to it. So a lot of the time it might be that I'm just testing something new. That will just be the first thing I do, which is what I'm doing today. I'm trying a new fragrance from Bon Parfumeur.
Yes.
I think it's called Mer Shadow. So I'm testing that out. But it really depends on the situation. I'm really weird about color. So in my head, sometimes I can't wear a certain fragrance with a certain outfit because the color doesn't match. So if I'm wearing red, I will in my head most likely pick a perfume that in my head is red. Right. So, but it really depends on what I'm trying to achieve that day, I think.
Yeah. But that's a good way to approach it, isn't it? To have a small edit on a tray, and then those are the ones you work through for the week or the season or whatever it is. That's good. Because your collection must be vast.
It's vast and it's overwhelming, and it's a good way to sort of narrow it down as well, and also to challenge myself to wear things that I've not worn in a long time. I quite like to do that. But I've always thought that fragrance is fancy dress in a way. So I think that you can use it as cosplay. So there are times when if I've got a big meeting or something difficult I want to do, I will want either wear something comforting or something that I feel that gives me some authority. Yeah. I think you can use it as a costume, and that's often plays into my thinking. What version of myself do I want to be today, and how can I obviously pick my clothing in a way that represents that, but also my fragrance.
Yeah, it's an incredible power that it has, isn't it, to give you that
absolutely.
Extra confidence or comfort you, as you say. Yeah. And we mentioned you had a little bit of time away. And I wonder, now that you've come back with the new look makes sense. What do you feel about what's going on now in terms of retail, in terms of what you're seeing online? Does it seem to you that much has changed in the interim?
Yeah, it's massively different. I think
Is it?
hugely different. I think the sheer volume, not just in terms of sheer volume of brands, sheer volume of launches, but also the sheer volume of people discussing fragrance, and the content creation has gone
Yeah.
and exploded. And, on TikTok and Instagram, especially, I just see so many more creators. So
I
there's just
suppose
lots
I suppose
more.
TikTok itself. I mean, obviously it was around a few years ago, but that whole content creation world on TikTok, as you say, has just exploded in the last 18 months, 2 years, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah, and it's so different. I find, I'm a big user of TikTok anyway, because it's just, you're dopamining going through
Yeah,
scrolling all
yeah,
the
yeah.
time. But it's so different because it's just so immediate, and that's the thing that I find really interesting, but also challenging as a, kind of, I suppose, uh, Instagram native creator, is
Mm.
that, I'm used to, you curate your content, you spend time on it, you put it together, it looks beautiful, you send it out into the world. On TikTok, you can just have a messy bedroom, open up your camera, and say something interesting, and people will respond to it. And the numbers on TikTok and Instagram are different. Like TikTok, you can just reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
people, whereas Instagram feels like it's much more small in terms of reach now. So, but it also, I think you're seeing so much difference in terms of the age range of people. It's so much younger now, and I think it's really positive
Yeah.
to see. I'm all for the more people talking about fragrance and consuming fragrance, the better. I think that's really, really good. I do think we've created somewhat of a knowledge gap for people, and I think that's a really interesting space to be. And that's why when I've come back as Making Sense Makes Sense, I've sort of put myself out as a manifesto to say I want to educate people, I want to share knowledge, I don't want
Mm.
to gatekeep. If I like something, I'll share it. If I have some knowledge, I'll share it. I don't want to be snobbish about things. If it's a nice
Yeah.
fragrance and it costs £10, then I'm going to celebrate it as much as a £500 fragrance. And just have fun with it, because I think a lot of the time we take it very, very seriously. It's always, a man in a suit and a tie talking about fragrance. But actually, fragrance is something that is accessible to everybody. Everybody wears it. Everybody has an emotional connection to it. So it should be for everybody. And that's what I want to do, is just do that. And if I can help close a little bit of that knowledge gap,
Mm.
then I'm happy to.
Well, and I think you do a brilliant job of that, and I totally agree. I think sometimes it feels like some of the content, and for good reason. We talk about fragrance as an art form, and of course the discourse around that, and people can get deep and dark, and there's something for everyone. But it does feel like sometimes just to have a bit more fun with it and a bit of levity
Mm,
just kind of sweetens the pill. Really, it makes it much more consumable, much more interesting.
totally.
Um, I think you talked about what you did with Nick before on Twitter, and do you find where it was you know creating reviews in that short number of words? Have you found that that's helped you now in this sort of short attention span TikTok world? Do you think you're using those skills now to create? Because I know sometimes you do a longer form review, or sometimes you'll do quite a short one. I guess that's been a good skill to have right now, of just sort of getting something across quite quickly.
Massively. And I found this especially when I've been doing reels and then obviously
Mm,
transferring those over to TikTok, is you probably have about 3 seconds to capture someone's attention. So
mm,
it's thinking about, what can I say in 3 seconds as a hook to get someone into this video.
mm,
And it's really tough, because also I really don't want to be sensationalist. I think there is a real, I could go on there and start being really, really negative about things. I could say,
yeah,
I hate this fragrance. This is crap. This is crap.
and that gets
Um,
views, doesn't it?
it gets views because people, they engage with it because either they disagree, or it
Mm,
feeds into something in us, which is, we do all have that little bit of negativity in us. And I could do that, but I've always been of the view that if I like it, I will talk about it. If I don't like it, I may still talk about it, but I will say, explain it in such a way that you just make your own decision around it. Because I don't want to be a critic. I'm not an arbiter of taste. The
yeah,
fragrances I like are not necessarily better than the fragrance someone else likes. So I just want to explain it in a way and go, okay, well, this has an interesting facet, or whatever, so people can make their own decisions. So I think you could do that. So it's really hard to try and do it in such a way that's positive and
mm,
in line with my sort of manifesto that I've come up with, which is about having fun. So you have to be really, and some of the things that I found is it's really about seeing what sticks. I think you have to throw a lot of stuff out there.
Try different things. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've done some things. I spent ages doing a reel the other day where I kind of filmed a comical take on a perfume advert, and I thought it was hilarious because I think I'm very funny. Yeah, and I think it did well with some people, but it wasn't hooky enough. It wasn't fast paced enough, I think, for like the general population of people scrolling and exploring. So yeah, it's kind of fascinating to try and find out what works.
Well, I think if you have that attitude that try different things and A/B test things and then lean into the things that work well, that seems pretty smart. I'll tell you the thing that, again, I'm sure it's an age thing. The thing that I struggle with a bit more, and it's not just TikTok, it's Instagram as well. But coming back from Essence and looking at all the kind of content that comes, I think one of the dangers with the really short form content is just feels some of the things can feel very transactional in that everything becomes about a haul. This is people come back and go, these are the 20 bottles I was given at Essence, or these are the 30 things that have been sent to me in mailers this week. People unboxing things and going, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. And then just sort of doing 2 words about, oh, this is a keeper, this is great, I'm not really into this. Just, just that sort of, that transactional thing, that acquisitional thing. I don't know what, but I guess they're probably doing exactly the same thing, and it obviously works well and getting lots of views. But I just find it quite cold, that thing of just acquiring more stuff, or everyone just doing filling shelves stuff. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I think we're going to start to see a bit of a pushback against it. I'm already starting to see it. I am very open about when I get sent a gifted product. Yep. My view is important. It's lovely for me to receive perfume. I need it to talk about it. It does not pay my mortgage, so it's great to have a fragrance, but I can't. I'm not living off that.
Yeah. That's where the NHS comes in.
That's where the NHS comes in. But I get pushback. You're just saying this because I had a comment the other day. Someone said something along the lines of, well, the only people because I started a reel with everyone is obsessed with this fragrance. And everybody is genuinely when it's the latest one from Amouage, Purpose 50. I'm really enjoying it. I've worn it several times. Every time I wear it at work, I get asked what it is. I was going into Gymshark to try something on, and the lady literally accosted me in the changing room and was like, "What are you wearing?"
Did she?
Yeah, and I was like, cool. "I'm just about to get undressed. Can you please leave me alone?"
Step away.
Step away.
Lycra.
Exactly. So I started with everyone's obsessed because for me that's the narrative of the fragrance of my experience. And the comment, and this is not to be hateful towards this person, they were sharing their view, which was everyone is the only people obsessed with this fragrance are the ones who've received it, and the ones who've received it haven't paid for it. So I think there is a little bit of a pushback saying, well, it's not real because you're not buying it. But then also, for people to want to have the content to consume, the brands do need to push the product out there. Yeah. But I think we're going to see a pushback on it because there is a lot of content creation which is just people inflating their following, going out, getting fragrance bottles off brands, and then not being able to give the return of the investment to a brand. Yeah. And I think there will be a slight shift on it because I think, especially as the cost of living is increasing and people's, the wealth gap is increasing, I think people are less attuned to want to enjoy people showing off stuff and wealth.
I think you're right. And I wonder sometimes, you mentioned about being transparent about when things are sent to you. And I hope I do that, as well, because I think it's important. But I do wonder sometimes, I think people aren't always as doing the right thing in terms of, sort of mentioning that this was gifted product or this is an advert, or it can blur those lines, can't it, when people have been either gifted product is one thing, but then even paid to talk about something. And I think you need to have that transparency and that disclosure, and if it's not there, it just people lose trust, I think, don't they?
Absolutely. I think, and that's a real big thing. I think when you're building a following, that trust and relationship is so key because you want to, it's a real fine balance because you don't want to, I don't want to be an influencer. That's not what I want to do. I just want to be a person who talks about fragrance and educates people, shares knowledge and shares passion. I don't want to be like, you need to buy this, you should buy that, because then I just become a salesperson, and that's not the role. And I think it's really difficult to try and find that balance of keeping that trust there, and encouraging people to understand that, you know, this is what I'm telling you about because I like it, or it's unique, or, you know, whatever. But it's a real tough balance to strike, and I don't think everybody manages it.
No, I think you're right.
I don't think I always manage it. I think, you know, it's difficult.
Exactly. I think we're also learning the rules of engagement as we go, aren't we? And you know, you talked about TikTok and the fact that it's a bit younger and there's more teenagers. I suppose in this new era, when you've come back, that's a new thing as well, isn't it? That there's so many more teenage boys engaged with fragrance, and as you said, it can only be a good thing to just get people interested. But it does seem a whole new phenomenon. There's so many conversations I have with, you know, brands and distributors, and everyone's fascinated by this new world. You know, do you think, what do you think's shifted? Do you think they've just come on because of TikTok, and do you think it'll sustain?
Well, I think it's a mixture of reasons. I think it's TikTok. I think it's more accessible. Anyone with a camera can just, you know, on their phone, can literally just start talking about fragrance. I think it's partly also because fragrance is now, more so than ever, the affordable luxury. I know we say that, and there are fragrances that are selling for, you know, £900, £1,000 and plus, but, you know, most people can save to buy a £300, £400 fragrance. They're not, and not everyone's going to be able to save for, you know, a Louis Vuitton bag or a Chanel bag. You know, those prices are just not accessible to lots of people. So, you know, it's the new lipstick. You know, it used to be the lipstick effect, that it would be the entry point. It's now fragrance, so much so. And I think also you've got lots of what I find really interesting is, so I was talking to someone about this the other day, that I went to the Harrods Salon de Parfum recently, and I have not been there in years. So, you know, whenever I'd went up there, it's on the 6th floor of Harrods. It's all the really hyper expensive boutiques. You know, you've got Guerlain selling crystal encrusted things in there that are just, you know, you'd have to ask the price to buy it. And it was always dead, very clinical space. And obviously people go up there with lots of money and they go and privately buy stuff. Last time I went, there was probably about 10 teenage boys all around the Xerjoff boutique. And, you know, they're selling fragrances for £250 upwards. And I was just really struck by that. So I don't know whether that's leading into purchasing. I don't know whether that's just them exploring. But there's an interest there, and I think that's fascinating. And you're seeing a lot of the brands they're interested in are you know, the really hyper expensive ones, or these quite obscure smaller brands that are, you know, giving very long, good longevity, good projection. Yeah. But also the way they're wearing fragrances is very different. There's lots of layering. I see so much content about layering, which was never really a thing before.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Sometimes in those perfume events, and you'll have a perfumer there, and some people will talk about, you know, what's the best way to layer this fragrance, and what should I put it with? And you can see the perfumers recoil, you know, the work of art going, stick that on top of that. Are you kidding me? But as you say, I think it's sort of, there was a time where it's like, well, you know, how do you get younger people interested, and boys, you know, not talking about fragrance, and it seems, you know, it seems very girly or whatever. But it's good that excuse me, it's good that that's gone, and, you know, people are really engaged with it, and there's certain creators that are doing a fantastic job, isn't there, of sort of communicating what it's all about.
Massively, and they have huge followings. It's impressive.
Well, the name of the podcast is Man in the Mirror, and I love to find out about people's view of themselves, I suppose. And, you know, when you're getting ready and looking in the mirror, you know, what do you think about what looks back at you, Thomas?
Yeah, I've thought about this question quite a lot, because I knew it was coming. And I think the honest answer is I'm not someone who has a very positive self-image, and I don't think I ever have.
Right.
And I think that's a mixture of things. I think, you know, growing up with ADHD, you have a real self-esteem deficit, because you spend your whole life being either told you're lazy and dumb, or feeling that you're lazy and dumb. And I didn't really think I had any intelligence until I was about sort of 30. I probably at 30
really?
probably thought, I thought I was really stupid. And I think that kind of degrades your self-esteem in a way. So I will always look for the faults in, you know, I'll always go, and I don't like, you know, look at my chin, or look at my teeth, or look at whatever, and be like unhappy, and look at my weight. So I don't know. Yeah, I've never been happy with the way I look.
And it's a hard one, isn't it? Because it, as you say, it all comes from within, and we're cruelest to ourselves and all those
Mm.
things. But is it something that you work on? And you know, I guess all these things are a work in
Yeah.
progress, aren't they? But you know, how would one go about trying to
So I'm
do
a
some
big
work on that?
I'm a big therapy person. I think therapy
Are you?
is really great. Yeah, I think I do. I like to do it. It's sort of almost like it's as important as my skincare routine. It's maintenance. I see it.
Mm.
So I do a lot of that, and I think I don't know. I think it's a unique sort of factor. I think it's what I do is as content creation is very visible. So
I was going to say, because you are putting yourself out there all
mm,
the time, aren't you? Yeah, either on screen or at events. It's one has to be cognizant of that, and that people see you, and you have to look back at yourself, don't you?
yeah, and I think it's strange because I'm very confident in talking and
Mm.
public speaking, and that doesn't bother me at all. I don't worry about it. I think like with that, I think you know it's yeah. When you're a content creator, I always think if I had abs, I'd have hundreds of thousands of followers because I would just be holding perfume. If
You'd never
if
have your
I
top on. It'd be
I
like
would
Jeremy.
you would all hate me because I'd be turning up to events topless and be like, guys, look at me. I'd be unbearable. But
You're like,
you
Thomas, get
know,
your shirt buttons up, man. Come
I'd be
on.
like, what? Yeah, that's best case scenario. The worst case scenario is Thomas, why are you not wearing a shirt again? I'd be like,
Yeah, put some clothes on.
oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
But so I think that impacts it. But I think also you have a very specific pressure growing up as a gay man because you have to fit into certain boxes. You either have to be really, really, have an amazing body, or you can be a bear. But being in between is really difficult because you're not one or the
What are
other.
you called if you're in between?
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to work it out. I think
Come up with
I,
something.
I think I've settled on because we have loads. There's bears, there's otters, blah blah blah. I think
Yeah.
I've settled on seal because I
Okay.
don't I don't have lots of I have no chest hair, which is just so frustrating because I've always said if I had chest hair I would be unstoppable, but
Yeah.
no, I don't.
Good in water.
So
You good in water?
yeah, I'm quite a good swimmer. So sort of chubby and hairless chest is a seal. That's what I've decided. It's very attractive sounding. But yeah, I think so. I think I've always really struggled with self-esteem, and that doesn't mean that I hate myself or I look in the mirror
Yeah.
and I think, ugh, I'm the worst person. But I just think I will always see the things that I don't like before I see the things that I do like. I think.
Yeah. Very interesting. And it is something that I hear quite a lot on the podcast, and think, quite easy to sort of go for the negative things first, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, finally, Thomas, what are the things that bring you joy and make you happy, maybe outside of the workplace?
I really like music. Music is like my
Mm.
happy place. I collect records. I'm very slightly neurodiverse around listening to music. I would like to listen to albums start to finish, and
Love it.
I kind of have a couple of routines around it. So because I think I'm on all day. So what I do is either if it's fragrance or not fragrance in the HR stuff, I'm very on. So when I get home, I don't want to be on. So when I always go to bed at 9 and I sit in bed and I listen to an album start to finish, maybe read a book, maybe stare at my phone, maybe glance into the abyss for a while, and just relax and completely just lose myself in whatever I'm listening to. And I
Yeah.
do that a lot. And I sometimes share on Instagram what I'm listening to.
Yeah. We've had some good conversations about music. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had loads, and I think it's good. I think it's very similar to fragrance in a way because it's an emotional art form. We connect to it in the same way, but also I think a lot of the way that we describe fragrance and music overlaps because we can talk
Yeah.
about it's music is layers of instrumentation, isn't it? And
Yeah. Totally.
fragrance is layers of material, so there's lots of overlap there. But I also am equally as happy just sitting with my husband Nigel and our dog Pugsley, listening to vinyl on a weekend.
Pugsley's a big star of the internet as well. Often
He is,
features on the
yeah.
posts and things.
He's becoming
Very
a
good looking
monster.
pug.
He is very good looking, becoming very egotistical now that he's getting more fame. But we'll just listen to music. I've got a nice little nook in the house where we have all the records and sofa, and I just chill out there. I think that's probably when I'm happiest.
Yeah, and I think you say that the similarities with music and fragrance, and they do seem to go very well together. And you've done this a lot as sort of pairing songs or artists with fragrance, and I think it's a really good way to find a way in, isn't it?
It is, because it's a frame of reference, and that's what I really enjoy. So when I do my speed sniffs and reviews, or even when I do a written review now, I'll always have a mood board, which will be saying if it was a color, if it was a texture, and usually if it was a song, what song would it be? And I quite like that about Instagram, is that I can then, and also TikTok, is I can add that song
Add the song.
into the review, and it kind of just sets the tone. So yeah, I think it's lovely to bring those things together, because it's an accessible reference point for someone. They might not know Vetiver, but they will know.
We'll know a Madonna song.
They will do, or some obscure jazz song I've picked from my.
We've touched on it briefly, I think, about, well, you used to have Fume Chat, and you have a podcast that's coming soon. Love to know a bit more about that, and I'm sure my listeners would too.
Yes, so it's going to be called Making Sense Make Sense, and the whole idea of this podcast is to demystify the world of fragrance. So each episode is going to be sort of a deep dive into a different aspect of the fragrance industry. And I'm really keen to, I love talking to perfumers. I think episode 2 of the podcast is me talking to 2 perfumers. But there are so many more professions and creatives in the industry that make it what it is. And I would like to kind of shine a light on that, because I think for people who want to get into the fragrance industry, they think about becoming a perfumer. It's very hard to become a perfumer. It's also not the right skill set for everybody. You have to be, particular.
I mean, the science and the chemistry and all that stuff you have to have for that.
But it's also about.
Will it always be guest based?
It will always be guest based. Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to sit listening to me for 45 minutes just rambling on. But maybe. But yeah, I think it's going to be guest based. So I want to talk to PR professionals. I want to talk to creative directors. I want to talk to educators and retail staff, and explore how the fragrance industry works from lots of different aspects. So it's launching in April. I've got the first couple of episodes recorded. Just working out all the final technical bits, as getting it all together is a joy. And it's interesting this time, because when I did Fume Chat, I did it with my good friend Nick, who I've mentioned, so we could bounce off each other. So it feels very different to sort of do it on my own, but I'm really, really excited about it.
I feel you. Yeah, it's that thing of, I mean, who needs to hear about the stuff that goes on behind the scenes? But yeah, that kind of, there's quite a lot in terms of the planning and scheduling, and then doing it, and then editing, and then getting it out. This, and alongside all the other things you do, it's quite a lot. It's quite a big undertaking, isn't it?
It is, but I want to make it an accessible, again, entry point for people, so you can listen without knowing a huge amount about perfume. It's just to show you this amazing industry, these amazing art forms, and how it all comes together from so many different ways, and talking about it in a way that will make sense to anybody.
Well, I'm really excited to hear it. I'm really looking forward to it. I enjoy your content so much. So I'll put all the links to some of the products you mentioned, and where people can find you online. We look forward to the new series. But thank you so much for joining me, Thomas. It's been a real pleasure.
No, thanks for having me, Hayden.
See you soon.
See you soon.